And a Fox News alert, there will be a nominee for Secretary of State, a familiar name to most of you, former presidential candidate and now Massachusetts Senator John Kerry. He is the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Let's talk about it with a member of that committee, Senator Johnny Isakson, a Georgia Republican. He was part of the hearing yesterday on the Benghazi attacks. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, Senator, your reaction to your fellow senator, soon to come before your committee, as nominee to be Secretary of State.
Well, John Kerry is very qualified. I've had the occasion to work with him on the Foreign Relations Committee now for 4 years. He's been very active and engaged in international diplomacy, in particular the comprehensive peace agreement in the Sudan, which was successfully concluded last year. I think he would be a good nominee for the president.
The Senate, it is said, is a club. Members are polite to one another. Do you see anything that stands in the way of his confirmation?
Well, every club has an initiation process, and we have our approval hearings and advice and consent in the Senate, so I'm sure there will be questions and analysis of his career, but I think he'll be confirmed.
And would you, I presume that's going to happen fairly quickly. Do you know a timetable on all of this?
Well, that's an important question. I think we need closure on the Benghazi issue, and he's in a particularly interesting position as chairman of the committee while we're holding the hearings on Benghazi. I think it's very important for his sake and for the country's sake that we have closure on what happened in Benghazi, we put that to bed, and then have a nomination come forward.
And where does that stand now? The Independent Review Board put out a fairly scathing report earlier this week. It's my understanding your committee had hoped to hear testimony from the Secretary of State, but she has not been available to this point.
Well, we certainly hope she recovers quickly from the concussion. I understand she wants to testify in January. I hope it's early January, because the last questions to really be answered to close this investigation need to come from the Secretary of State.
Does she need to testify while she is still in office, in your view?
Well, I think she would still be in office until the appointment of John Kerry as Secretary of State is confirmed, so I think there's plenty of time for her to testify.
Right. I just wanted to get your take on whether or not testifying as a civilian versus testifying while actively on duty as Secretary of State is important.
I think it would be best as active Secretary of State for her to testify during that rather than a past Secretary of State.
What is the biggest question that comes to your mind about what happened in the Benghazi attack that led to the loss of our ambassador and those 3 other American heroes?
Well, you know, when you read the Accountability Review Board report, it calls a culture of pushback within the State Department in terms of requests for more security, and the fact that the action never seemed to travel up to the 7th floor, which is where Secretary Clinton's office is. I think it's important for us to find out if that culture of pushback exists. We need to find out what we can do to do away with it, to streamline requests for more security, and be sure we can respond to our diplomats in harm's way wherever they are in the world.
So as you stand here today, you seem fairly confident that these 2 big items, the looking for answers to the Benghazi report of the attack, as well as the confirmation hearings for Senator Kennedy, Senator Kerry, forgive me, you believe those 2 things can be handled fairly quickly?
I think they can. It'll really depend on the timing of Secretary Clinton's willingness to come testify before the committee.
Senator Johnny Isakson, Republican of Georgia, it's good to have you on today. Thank you very much.
Good to be with you, John. Thanks. Merry Christmas.
And to you.
A lot of breaking news.